What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today with another deck profile, and we are back in Edison, and of course we are, as you can see, playing Gadgets. So we had our first Edison event at Locals since we decided to try and kick it off, and managed to win, so pretty happy. Went 4-0, so first place Gadget list right here. Overall, the deck was very good. Very rarely did I feel as though the game had slipped out of my control. I think I maybe dropped 2 games, I think 1 or 2 games the entire tournament. So I was really happy. Even in the situations where I had drawn like 3 gadgets, normally that's pretty bad. We managed to recover those situations quite well. I really, really enjoy this deck. It gives you a lot of value off the gadgets, of course, and then you're effectively just going back to old school Yu-Gi-Oh! And trading off with traps to try and find value. Knowing your choke points in this deck is quite important to get the most value out of your traps. You've got to kind of know what your opponent's deck is aiming to do. But in Edison, that's pretty easy to understand. Like, a lot of these decks are like the dark decks that use the synchros from grave. You have some Blackwing stuff that floats around. Overall, like, deck's really good, and I would definitely consider playing this if you are looking to pick up and play Edison. Especially if you like gadgets, of course. If you like machines in general. And realistically, this isn't the most expensive Edison deck. Like, there are some random Edison cards that are really expensive, but mostly this deck is fairly affordable. So definitely would recommend picking it up if you're on a budget. But before we do get started on this deck profile, as always, do please drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people on the channel. And let's jump on into this deck profile. Okay, so starting us off, we of course have our gadget lineup, and I did opt to play 3 of each gadget. I really wanted to make sure that I opened 1 to get the value engine started. Like I mentioned in the opening, there were situations where we opened 2 or 3, but that is just kind of what happens when you're playing 9 cards. But these are 9 cards that start your engine. You get 1, such as the other, such as the other, such as the other, so realistically you have at least 9 turns of having a normal summon. Unless you get judgmented, I think. I had one opponent, I think, judgmented a gadget just to try and get me off gadgets. But hey, I opened multiple. Realistically, what you want to do is go through your gadgets, try and establish, keep the grind going, keep it going, until it's time to get into your Machina or Machina package. So I played 2 copies of Fortress for this, along with 3 copies of Gear Frame. And I did opt for 2 copies of Peacekeeper. Again, just to get value out of everything that I put on board. These are all the monsters that I played. So, yeah, no fancy Light Swans or other flip effect cards in here. This is my entire monster line. Everything is designed to get you value. Realistically, you just want to always have something you can put on the board. Just be a nuisance. 1-to-1 trade-off with your opponent. Yeah, realistically, everything here works brilliantly. I wouldn't change my ratios at all on my monster lineups. Essentially, you want to try and gear frame into your fortress, because then that gives you, that's another turn of normal summon that you can keep the grind going with. And then realistically, when you get to the back end of your gadgets, so once your gadgets are no longer going to get the value of searching, that's when it's time to push. That's when it's time to go for game. That's when you're going to use them to summon your fortress. And then, of course, we move into our spells. This card was probably the best card of the deck. 3 copies of Smashing Ground. Like, now that I put them out, this card was so good, I had to check whether or not I was playing 3 illegally. But, yeah, this outed pretty much everything. My opponent synchroed, bang, Smashing Ground. Because, like, it's very rare for your opponent to be able to generate multiple huge bodies. It's quite good just to be like, drop Smashing Ground, that's gone. We're moving on. Also, the way that we added a lot of problems, the way we add a lot of set cards, 3 copies of Creature Swap. Basically, because again, you're always going to have gadgets. You normal summon a gadget, you Creature Swap, you take the problem card, you out your opponent. Giving your opponent yellow gadget is what you typically want to do. Very rarely, if you're on green, you want to try and hold that Creature Swap if you can, unless it's absolutely needed, because last thing you want is for green to, of course, search the next piece, and then the next piece can't out the green, if they have a way of stopping you. Then for the rest of our spells, we ran 2 copies of Solidarity, just to make everything much bigger. This card became a problem for a lot of my opponents. Typically, if the Heavy Storm had been played already, slap down that Solidarity, you're ready to go. There were also situations where, like, I had my opponent had managed to get rid of my fortress, but realistically I was just fortressing just to turn on my solidarity. Anyway, here's my solidarity. Here's a gadget that's 2000 attack. I'm going to start swinging at you. These just help you apply so much pressure off those gadgets. Turns the game from being like, it's annoying because you have a normal summon every turn, to, okay, these are starting to be really dangerous here. Then we have the rest of our, I guess, the one-off spells for the deck. So I played one copy of Limiter Removal. You want to hold this card until you know you are going to win the game. Last thing you want to do is Limiter Removal into a Gauze. Last thing you want to do is Limiter Removal into, pretty much anything that stops you. The only time you want a Limiter Removal is when you know I'm going to get a lot of value off this, and I don't really care if my stuff dies. Next card, I'm probably going to increase the count on this. I want to have copies of this in my sideboard. Nobleman of Crossout. The main reason I only played the one was because I only have the one French blue text Duelist League card. By all means, if you're watching this video and you have one of those, would appreciate if you sent it to me. Specifically French. Actually, we might just get a whole bunch of different languages on these. But yeah, I just wanted to play that one. Actually, speaking of that, I probably should rarity bump the creature swaps and Smashing Grounds, since they put in so much work. Then our other spells are, I guess, the two power one-offs. I apologize, I've just realized there's a bit of glare here. But it's Mystical Space Typhoon and Heavy Storm. Two cards that should be in every single Edison deck. Moving into our trap lineup, because this is where, again, you get a lot of the value in this list. Starting us off is our 2 copies of Ultimate Offering. Again, card that pushes for game. Very rarely will I kind of willy-nilly set this card in the early game. Again, you can see right here, the Heavy Storm. Once the Heavy Storm's been used, then you can feel a lot safer in using your Ultimate Offerings and your Solidarities. If you can establish both, the game is over. Like, it's pretty rare that your opponent's going to be able to contend with Ultimate Offering plus Solidarity. Everything that's coming out is huge. You're effectively playing, 2,000 life points to generate 10,000 damage. Like, it's gonna be a problem for your opponent. The rest of our trap cards are 3 copies of Dim Prison. Probably actually the worst trap card that I had. It was very rare that I was trading this off in situations that were good for me. In the final, I did play against another Machina or a Machina player, and having to intentionally not deprison my opponent's fortress because it targets. So I had to let my opponent swing through for a bunch of damage because I had another deprison in hand. I didn't want to get the deprison ripped out of my hand because I needed it. So I had to take the damage, set the deprison on the next turn, so I had just a hand of, I think, 2 other gadgets, and then let my opponent rip the card out. It was a gadget, of course. Oh no, I'm so scared of that. And then I was free to deprison away my opponent. Then we have, next off, a card that put in quite a lot of work, is the Bottomless Trap Hole, just being able to ensure your opponent doesn't have a card on board, so you can poke through for another 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 damage. Really good. Trapdoor Shoot, of course, look at your opponent's hand, rip a card out of it, find the problem card. I don't think I resolved this once and was like, man, good work. But of course, the scary thing is, Game 2, Game 3, if you lose Game 1, opening Trapdoor Shoot is really important, because you want to be able to look for your opponent's Cyber Dragon. If you can get rid of their Cyber Dragon, you're doing well. Then we have the rest of our traps are one-offs. So we've got 1 Starlight Road to protect, of course, from the Heavy Storm. 1 Royal Oppression. I did not cite another copy. I only own 1 copy of Royal Oppression. I should probably get a second for this. But realistically, it did work. The only time that it really wasn't that fantastic for me is that it can't stop the Blackwing combo, which is quite annoying. Then for our other traps, 1 TT, and 1 Mirror Force. Again, 2 cards that you want to hold your Starlight Road to stop when you are playing against these traps. But ultimately, cards that are fantastic. They're great for adding everything that you need to out. Okay, so next off we have the extra deck. The extra deck in this deck is close to completely useless. I literally used 1 card from it the entire tournament. But of course, just, I guess for argument's sake, we've got 2 copies of Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Yes, we're citing copies of Cyber Dragon. Yes, you can use your opponent's Cyber Dragon. Just be careful if you're playing this deck. If you side in your Cyber Dragons, don't let it sit on the board. I got very lucky with one around my opponent. They just forgot that they could use my Cyber Dragon and my machines. I got very lucky there. Then for the rest of the monsters are synchros. The one that matters is 1 copy of Stardust Dragon. We're playing 2 copies just for the sake of playing 2 copies here. Realistically, now from this point on, every single card you see is just, did I creature swap a tuner? Yes, what can I make? So we have one Black Rose Dragon, one Ally of Justice Catasta, one Colossal Fighter, one Thought Ruler Archfiend, one Red Dragon Archfiend, one Ancient Fairy Dragon, a Goyo, a Blackwing Armor Master, a Power Tool Dragon, another Ally of Justice Catasta. Okay, apparently I'm playing 2 of this. Didn't realize I was playing 2 of that. I think that was just filler. And 1 copy of Brio. Like I mentioned, all of these cards are interchangeable. You can play whatever you want here. These were just the cards that I put in to fill out this extra deck. Okay, and lastly we have the sideboard. The sideboard, I never actually really got to put the value in coming out of this sideboard. Like, it was pretty rare for me to open the cards that I wanted. Also, like, I was going second a lot, so, and these are pretty much just a wall of floodgates. A lot of 2-ofs, so I'll kind of keep these close together. 2 Cyber Dragon to start us off. Of course, for the mirror, if you see any other machine deck rolling around, Cyber Dragon just rips them to shreds. 2 copies of Fossil Diner. Like I mentioned, pretty much everything here is a floodgate. 2 copies of Thunder King. Again, it just comes up. 1 copy of Cold Wave. If you're going first, you can slap it down, get rid of your opponent's ability to play spells and traps for a turn, let you set up a little bit more, and away you go. 2 copies of Pulling the Rug. Very good against this deck, but ultimately, it's another side deck card. It's another side deck card that puts your opponent 1 turn back. That's all that matters. You just want to put your opponent 1 turn back at every point you can. We have 2 copies of Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, of course, Dark Deck's problem. 2 copies of Rivalry of Warlord. You can get cute in some matchups and just lock your opponent on a Light Sworn. Good times. And then lastly, 2 copies of Master of Restrict. Same thing, we want to turn off the Caius, and then we just want to make sure we're beating over things. You don't tribute at all in this deck. It's very rare for your opponent to be able to out a Solidarity Gadget without being able to tribute summon. So, yeah, good card. But that does wrap us up here for the deck profile for this one. I do apologize if I probably over-explained this a little bit. Like, this is a pretty simple deck. But just wanted to, I guess, give my thoughts and logic on if you wanted to change things. But yeah, overall, will I keep playing the deck? Yes. Do I want to rarity bump this deck now? Yes. Do I want the Hobby League playmat with gadgets on it from like 15, 16 years ago? Yes. Apparently you can order it from Europe, so I need to figure out a way to get that done. But yeah. As always, though, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good day, everyone.